Somebody is putting some respect on SMU's name heading into the 2025 season. We'll tell you about it here next on Locked On SMU.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is coming up for you here in just a couple of moments. My name is Grayson Singleton. Welcome to a Thursday edition of Locked On SMU on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and spending a couple moments of your day with me. Hey, coming up on today's show also, we're just getting out of SEC Media Days at my day job. So I want to preview ACC Media Days that will be coming up next week, where Rhett Lashley and the contingent of Mustangs are going to be available to the media. We're also going to talk about a game that I think could be a trap game on SMU's schedule. Yep, there's one, and I'll bet you probably won't guess which game that is. So all that coming up for you today in the next half hour, known as Locked On SMU. So over-under win totals. I find these so fascinating. And I'm a gambling dude. I'm not a degenerate, but I like to place a couple bets here and there. And yesterday, we talked about Josh Pate and how Josh Pate sees that there could be an impending regression coming for SMU in the 2025 year following the explosion that we saw in 2024. Now, what do our people in Vegas say? Well, let's go over to our friends at FanDuel, because I looked at the over-under win totals around the ACC, and you might be a little bit shocked of what you're going to see here. Now, if you don't understand gambling terms, don't worry. I will break that all down for you. So if we scroll down to SMU, where FanDuel has their win total, the over-under is 8.5. The over-under is 8.5 wins for the SMU Mustangs this year. Now, if you think there's some crazy regression, you might want to think again, because Vegas may not be right every single time, but I've said this before, Vegas is very rarely far off. That doesn't necessarily happen where Vegas's projections are astronomically off one way or the other. So over 8.5 wins is a minus 114. The under 8.5 wins is minus 106. The lower the number, the higher the favor. Which, when you define it that way, the over being 8.5 at minus 114, it's a shorter return on your money, but that's how you know that Vegas thinks SMU is going to be pretty good. And they're going to be pretty good, and Vegas thinks they will probably get to 9 wins with a gauntlet of a schedule. So yesterday I told you why I disagree with Josh Pate in that SMU is going to regress to 8-7 wins maybe. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, do I think they get to 11? Time will tell, and I'm not going to issue an official projection just yet, even though I have said I think SMU can get back to the college football playoff. But an over-under of 8.5 wins at FanDuel, our friends at FanDuel, where the over is minus 114 as opposed to the under being minus 106, leads you to believe that Vegas more can see SMU getting to 9-10 wins than 7 or 8 wins. And I think that's fair, because I think there are really only 2, maybe 3, but really 2 possible losses on the schedule, and they are the predictable ones: at Clemson and home against Miami. Now, that's not to completely cast out the Baylor game or even the TCU game, even though I think the Baylor game will be the more stressful for SMU fans than TCU is. I'm just not that high on TCU this year. Baylor, more so. But if you look up and down that schedule, Baylor, you got A&M Commerce, TCU, Missouri State, Syracuse, Louisville, Boston College, Cal, you start to see that there aren't a lot of games that are, let's just say, losable for sake of simplicity. Now, obviously, every game is losable. You've got to come out and give your A-plus game 110% every single day in a power conference. So every game by definition is losable. But if we're being real, each team giving their best and barring catastrophic injury to a quarterback or something like that, you really can't see SMU losing any more than 2, maybe 3 games. And losing 3 games in the regular season already cashes your over right there. So I see pretty much easily another double-digit win regular season here. And I think a large part of that is because you get Syracuse at home. I think getting Syracuse at home and not having to go up to Syracuse, New York to play that game is massive. Now, it sets you up for a back-to-back later on in the season when you have to go to Clemson and then go to Wake Forest in back-to-back weekends. But I think the right games you're getting at home. Number 2, you're splitting Clemson and Miami home and road. I think that's huge. I think having to play both of them on the road in the same year would make the schedule that much more tougher, obviously. So SMU, just by virtue of the schedule, I see another double-digit regular season here. Now, by the way, these are regular season wins, so any sort of postseason will not count toward this. But I think you will have room to spare here if you want to go to our friends at FanDuel, take advantage of that minus 114 on the 8.5 for SMU. I think you'll make yourself some money there. At 8.5 wins, I like that. I like SMU for over 8.5 wins. Now, what does the rest of the ACC potentially look like according to FanDuel? Well, let's go through here. Miami, they have at 9.5 wins. Okay, so Vegas thinks Miami is going to have a better record potentially than SMU. And I'm trying to pull up Miami's schedule here because I didn't do so before I started recording, but here we go. So here's Miami. Oh, great. The Hurricanes open up at home against none other than the national champion runner-ups, Notre Dame. Okay. Then you're home against Bethune-Cookman, home against South Florida, and then you've got a home game against Florida, which let's not sneeze at Florida because Florida's going to be a pretty decent team, I think. With DJ Lagway coming back, things seem to have been stabilized under Billy Napier. Florida's killing it on the recruiting trail, which, if anything, unless you're Texas Tech and throwing billions of dollars at people, how your recruiting goes generally can give you some sort of a sense on how people view the program and how much momentum is in that program, especially given the fact that Florida's gone out of state and recruited very well in the 2026 class. So there is a reasonable world where Miami is 2-2 by the time we get to September 13th, which would gravely put that over 9.5 in jeopardy. And then you've got a game at Florida State. They could probably win that game. Louisville, Stanford, at SMU, and then Syracuse. The one break that Miami gets is that Miami doesn't play Clemson in the regular year, which could help toward that 9.5. So that's where Vegas has at 9.5. By the way, that over 9.5 is plus 120. There's your tell right there because that's the underdog. So Vegas thinks the under has a more reasonable chance of hitting with Miami, which you can get at a minus 148. So keep that in mind. Again, this is all according to our friends at FanDuel. Clemson's over 9.5 as well, except to get the over, it's minus 210. So FanDuel seems to think that Clemson is a lock to get to double-digit regular season wins. Do I have a qualm with that? Nope. I think Clemson is going to get to double-digit wins. I think the 2 teams in the ACC that will get to double-digit regular season wins are Clemson and SMU. I think their schedules shake out, and Clemson I just think is really, really good. Once we get to the ACC championship game, we will reevaluate there. But as for the regular year, I like that. Oh, by the way, North Carolina in its first season with old Bill Belichick at the helm, over under 7.5 wins. The over will get you a pretty good return on your money, plus 138. The under at minus 170. So that's what FanDuel thinks about those teams in the ACC. Oh, you know what? And why don't we take a moment to poke fun at somebody? Florida State under 7.5 wins, minus 196. That should tell you everything that you need to know about Florida State and how much confidence there is in Big Mouth Thomas Castellanos. All right, coming up next here on Locked On SMU, ACC Media Day is next week. I'm going to tell you what I'm looking for from head coach Rhett Lashley and what kind of questions I think that the Mustangs will field from the media when they go to Charlotte next week. Stay tuned, Locked On SMU on a Thursday. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it just a little bit more thrilling, where you can get in the game, get closer to the game, and even make yourself a little bit more money. It's easy to use, the payouts are quick, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get up to $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. So what are you waiting for? Open up the FanDuel app or download it or visit FanDuel.com to get started with FanDuel. Back here on Locked On SMU, part of the Locked On podcast family. Be sure to subscribe and give us a like. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Find me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. I love interacting with all of you. I like to do that in the evenings when my day is done, and I'll respond to all of those comments as well. But remember, subscribe to this YouTube page so we can continue to grow this community, and you can get notified whenever we premiere. We premiere every day with new episodes at 1 p.m. Central Time. So in case you forget, subscribe to this channel and you will get notified for new episodes. Okay, ACC Media Days are upon us. Now, I decided to do this topic because my day job is covering the Oklahoma Sooners. And we just got through with SEC Media Day this week. Well, ACC Media Day is right around the corner in Charlotte, North Carolina. So what do I think is going to be the tone for SMU going into ACC Media Day? I'm getting mixed up. ACC Media Days from the media. Well, I'll tell you what I think about what Rhett Lashley should try to communicate. But here's what I think the questions are going to be from the present media. I think it's going to be a lot of regression talk. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, whether any of those media members believe it or not, whether I believe it or not, I think is irrelevant to this conversation. Because SMU, you think about SMU, dormant program for the longest time, not really a program with any kind of stable footing in Dallas since the 80s. They stabilize under Sonny Dykes, and then Rhett Lashley takes them to the conference championship. By the way, the ACC conference championship, and then the college football playoff last year. The natural prevailing thought is going to be, will they take a step back and become maybe closer to what they had been, say, in 2023 and 2022, where they were a functional program, but not a championship contender? Not in that conversation. That's what I think is going to be a prevailing thought from the media. I think the media is going to press the issue of all the starters that SMU lost on defense, especially those two linebackers. I think that is going to be a heavy, heavy sentiment. Can your defense replace a performance that, based on advanced numbers, was damn good last year, at times was a more than critical component to why SMU got to where it did last year? And how do you keep that up or try to duplicate it? Hell, how do you even approximate it with the dudes that you lost? So I think that's going to be a prevailing sentiment. By the way, that would probably be a question that I would ask if I were going to be there. I think another prevailing sentiment will be, what are you going to do at running back? What's going to be the way that you try to replace Brashard Smith? Is it going to be Derek McFall, Chris Johnson Jr., TJ Harden? How are you going to deploy all three? Is there a dark horse in the room that we're unaware of? I think that's a question that will have to be answered as well. And then the elephant in the room. Kevin Jennings going into his first year as the full-time starter. What improvements have you made? Are you seeing the game different? Do you have a better command of the offense? Are you going to cut down on the turnovers? What have you done in the offseason to make sure that you don't have double-digit turnovers again? Those are the sentiments that I think are going to be spewed in Charlotte about 5 days from now. And I think the team will be prepared for that, and I'm interested to see the answers. Now, what am I looking for from Rhett Lashlee in particular? Because Rhett Lashlee is going to give an opening statement, and then he's going to field questions. The easy answer is bravado. I think I'm going to be looking for, is Rhett Lashlee so confident in his accomplishments so far that gives him that swagger to communicate and really effectively communicate? Because I know he believes that the team can continue to build on what happened last year. But can he have the swagger and the charisma that makes everybody else believe it? Is he going to be able to sell it to everybody else? And then you and I come back on this show and talk about this on, what would it be, Thursday? No, about a week from now. And say, oh boy, yeah, SMU's going to win 11 games. Hell, they might go unbeaten in the regular year. Because will Rhett Lashlee make us feel that? That's what I'm going to be looking for him. Because I know he's confident, but I wonder if he's going to make everybody else in that room and everybody else across the conference and everybody else across the United States feel that same thing as well. The second thing I'm looking for from him is, how is he going to answer any sort of questions about the loss of production defensively? I'm very curious what he's going to have to say about that. Which leaders is he going to point out? Is he going to point out Isaiah Wacobia? He's going to point out the addition of Zakai Barker, Alex Kilgore, who, by the way, will be in Charlotte with the Mustangs. Is he going to point all of those things out? Is he going to go straight to his defensive coordinator, who, in no doubt, has been equipping his team for this, and the co-defensive coordinators as well? I want to see which direction he goes to answer those questions. And then number 3, and probably most importantly, how you feel about your quarterback. Because he made the move to go away from Preston Stone early last year, to Kevin Jennings, a pretty risky move. Take some guts, and it paid off. And now Preston Stone is no longer with the program. He's at Northwestern now, and Kevin Jennings is the dude, the unquestioned dude. Lastly, and I think this will depend on which contingent of the media is able to ask him questions during that opening statement, I want somebody to ask him about recruiting. I want to see what he thinks about recruiting. How you feel about your program? I checked right now, right before I went on the show, and SMU is 21st, according to Rivals, in the 2026 class. 21st best national recruiting class. So they're knocking on the door of a top 20. They are squarely in the top 25. What does this mean to you that you're able to land all these dudes? How important to you is it that you keep all the blue chip prospects from DFW right there in Dallas? I would love it. I don't know if that question is going to get asked, because I was watching Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's kind of struggling with the recruiting class right now. Nobody asked him about that. So I wonder if Rhett Lashlee is going to be asked that, because right now, committed in this 2026 SMU class are 8 4-stars. You would have to go back, I don't know how far, to find out the last time SMU did that. And the programs that SMU is beating out, Oklahoma, Miami, Ohio State, for some of these dudes, is more than impressive. So I would love to know what Rhett Lashlee thinks about that. What do you think? Any other questions? Any other sentiments that you think SMU and Rhett Lashlee will have to answer for, or answer to rather, at ACC Media Days? Let us know down in the comments. We'll engage if you think of anything else. But I think quarterback, I think loss of defensive production, and I think recruiting are some of the things that I hope we get some pretty good answers from Rhett Lashlee and the players that he chooses to bring. And I'm interested to see if he can display some sort of swag, not arrogance. We don't want to see arrogance from the head coach. And generally you don't, by the way. Let's be clear about that. We don't want to see arrogance. But Rhett Lashlee has accomplished something so far. They have not won a conference championship yet. They have not won a college football playoff game, let alone a national championship. So there's a lot more work to be done. Don't get me wrong. But they have set SMU to heights where it hasn't been since my pops was a teenager. And that, I'm curious to see if that sparks some sort of additional confidence in the head coach. And if he can display that to the rest of us next week. I'm very curious about that one. Coming up next, we will close up shop with a trap game. I think SMU had better bring its A game for this game. Otherwise, things could be ugly when we talk on the Monday following this one. Don't go anywhere. Closing up shop here on a Thursday on Locked On SMU. I'm Grayson Singleton. Glad you're spending part of your day with me. Remember to subscribe to this channel as well, Locked On SMU, so we can continue to grow this Pony Up community. Okay, there is one game on the SMU schedule that I think is going to be a trap game. Which game do you think it is? Before I give you my answer, which game do you think it is? Ask it to yourself. Maybe put it down in the comments. All right, here's my answer. October 25th at Wake Forest. About half of you listening to this just thought I just gave you evidence of drug use. Wake Forest is not going to compete with SMU, right? Well, hold on. I believe in scheduling breaks, and I believe in scheduling disadvantages. I really do. Now, could this be a whole lot worse if, say, you had to go to Boston College right after the Clemson game? Yeah, probably so. That probably would be worse. But Clemson and Wake Forest are in close proximity with each other, right? Yeah, true. I guess they are. One's in South Carolina, one's in North Carolina. Yeah, cool. It's your second week on the road in a row, by the way. It is 7 days after you play Clemson. It is 7 days before you play Miami. You get the picture here, right? SMU is going to get up for Clemson. I don't have one shred of doubt in that last statement. I think they're going to get up for Clemson. I know they're going to get up for Miami, especially with that game being on the hilltop. And then there's lowly Wake Forest sandwiched in the middle. A Wake Forest team that won 4 games last year. But it's your second straight weekend on the East Coast. And chances are, especially with the way the ACC has been scheduling, the chances are is that the Mustangs aren't coming back to Dallas, at least for any sustained period of time, between the game, between those Clemson and Wake Forest games, which means you will basically be, let's just call it 9 days without sleeping in your own bed, without eating your own food, without doing your own traditional habits. That matters. That really does matter, especially to athletes. So, given all of that, where the game falls between which two opponents, second weekend on the road in a row on the East Coast, this is what makes the whole aligning of all the conferences so tricky, right? Take Oklahoma State, for example, a couple of years ago. Big time win over Texas. I believe it was Texas a couple of years ago. The very next week, Oklahoma State goes to a UCF that they should pretty much handle easily. And Oklahoma State got worked in a rainstorm. Oklahoma State's defense didn't look like it existed. The offense, I mean, Alan Bowman was throwing the ball all over the damn place. It was bad. Think about last year. Miami going on the road to Cal and barely surviving. This is what the realignment of conferences does, is that it's more of an NFL type thing. And when you break down NFL schedules, there are things like exactly this that you're looking for. These sorts of divots in the schedule where you've got second weekend on the road exactly, and you're across the country, things like this. So this is a pitfall, I think, for SMU. And Rhett Lashley and his staff are going to have to keep their guys mentally intact, because it will be so easy, especially, by the way, especially if Wake Forest isn't good next year, which none of us really think they will be, but especially if Wake Forest isn't good. And let's just say you go into Clemson and beat Clemson. There's your emotional high that you probably are going to dread if you're the coaching staff, because you've got to nip that in the bud almost immediately and get to work, because we can't take Wake Forest lightly. On the road, you guys are probably going to be sick of sitting in hotel beds, being with somebody that you probably don't live with. You're not in your own bed. You haven't been eating your own food, so on and so forth. And then you've got to fight the temptation to look ahead to the Miami game when you return home, or just before we get to the Miami game, looking ahead to getting back home. And it's not like you're in the NFL dealing with this with 27-year-olds. You're dealing with this with 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds, hell, 19-year-olds. So that's why that Wake Forest game to me is a trap game. Now, can SMU beat Wake Forest without playing its A++ game? You would imagine so. Yes, I think so. But you don't want to make that game more interesting than it needs to be, because way too many times in college football, we have seen teams get got even before the whole conference realignment. Now, with conference realignment, that could be a major problem if you're not all the way locked in and you're looking ahead to the Miami game. So that's why I've got the Wake Forest game as a trap game. Let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're at that, go ahead and just click that subscribe button, like this video, turn on the alerts so you can get notifications for whenever we go on premiere as well here on YouTube, which we do so every day at 1 p.m. Central Time. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Locked On SMU, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, be sure to check out Brian Smith and The Portal on YouTube so you can stay up to date on all the information around college football. I'm Grayson Singleton. We will talk to you tomorrow to put an end on another week. Take it easy, everybody. We'll see you.